It's time for another Dice Tower review with Robert Geistlinger.
One of my favorite game designers is Rosenberg, and one of the first games I ever reviewed was At the Gates of Loyang, an earlier game of his that played solo and played multiplayer. Well, today I'm going to take a look at another game of his that also plays solo but plays multiplayer as well. Only this time we're going to be running a fishing company. Today I'm taking a look at Nusfjord. So here we're taking a look at Nusfjord. This is a game where players are going to be running their own fishing company within this city in order to try to have the most profitable company at the end of the game. We're not going to be directly fishing, rather we're going to run a company, and in the meantime we're also going to be sending out our ships to bring back our haul of fish. We're going to be hiring elders to help us run our company, building new buildings, and even issuing shares in our company that others can take and buy. The game itself is played over 7 rounds, and what you see here is the setup for a 2-player game, with really the only difference being these markers here. There would be more of them indicating whose turn it is, and there is a second side of the board as well for if you are playing with 3 or more players. The game does play up to 5. The easiest way to go through this is simply to go through a round, because a round is only going to have 3 phases in it. The first phase is going to be the fishing phase, and in the fishing phase we're going to bring in the haul from the bottom of our boat up to where we are at. So at the beginning of the game, each player starts with a haul of 3. We're going to collect those fish, and then we're going to need to distribute them according to this chart. The first thing that's going to happen is any elders in your position will get a fish. So if we had any elders here, they would receive one of these fish tokens. Currently, we do not. Next, you're going to look at shares in foreign possession. That is shares that you are not in control of your company. That could either be shares that have been issued up here on the board or shares that other players have purchased. So we would place these on those. Then you're going to place any shares that are in your supply of your own company, and any fish left over will go here to the reserve. Now, one thing I'm going to point out right from the start of the game is there is a reserve and a personal supply. The reserve is things you do not have access to. You will need to transfer them to your supply in order to use them. Your personal supply is over here, and that will be something that you have access to spend. Your reserve has no limit on most goods except fish, which fish you have a max of 8 that you can store. Your personal supply has no limit except for on wood. You can have a maximum of 12 wood in your possession. After this, and this is done simultaneously by all players at the table, you're going to take any fish that you have on shares that you are holding, including shares from other people, and you're going to put it into your personal supply, making it available now. From here, we're going to move into the action phase. In the action phase, you will have 3 workers in which to spend on actions, either out on the board or via elders that you have already taken in. Now, real quick, I'm going to go through these actions. By default, in a 2-player game, each of these only allows for 1 worker, but in a 3+ game, some of these spots will contain more than 1 available spot for a worker. The first thing we have here is gold. Simply, if you take that, you receive 1 gold. The next one we have is transfer reserve. Now this is how you get things out of your reserve into your supply. So if we took that, we would be allowed to take anything here and move it over. The next one is serve fish. Now serve fish is how we're going to put fish at the table that will then feed elders. And this is going to help you, but it's also going to help other people be able to use their elders. After all, this is a village. In order to do so, we take the action and we must spend fish equal to the number printed. So here we have a 2. So we would need to take 2 fish from our supply. You will place 1 on the plate and return anything else to the general supply. This does go up to 5, and we'll explain how those come off. For doing so, you will receive 1 gold. The next thing is build a building, and there are 2 spots on the board for that. Building a building will allow you to take buildings from over here, spend the necessary resources for it, and build it on your player board. Such as this one here, that is a fish stand. If we build this building using that action, we can immediately get 4 fish, and we would need to spend a wood. Well, currently we don't have a wood to spend. In fact, nothing over here do we have to spend anyway at the moment, but we do have this wet storage, which costs nothing other than taking the action. So let's say we bought this one, we could place it here on our board. This one says whenever your reserve is empty, add 3 to your reserve. So this will allow you to get additional benefits throughout the game, either through immediate benefits, victory points, or things that will happen in reaction. Now this one is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. The next action we have is to issue a share. To issue a share, you simply take one of your unissued shares and you place it here, and you receive 2 gold for doing so. Now why is that important? Because now that is a share in foreign possession unless you purchase it back. The next action you can take is to buy all shares, where it will cost you 1 gold per share that you want. In rounds 4 through 5, it will be -1 to the total, and in rounds 6 to 7, -2, but to a minimum of 0. You can't get any money back, and you must buy all of the shares available. The next action is deforest, and that will allow us to remove 1 forest and gain 5 wood. So we could take a forest off of our board and gain 5 wood for doing so. Now, something to note about these forests is they do stack on top of each other, but when they're removed completely and there's something here, you now have 2 spots to build in that if they're not built in or covered by forest within the game, they will cause negative points. The next one is a little simpler in that it's thin out. You just get 1 wood per forest that you have on your board. The next one is reforest, where you will get to place 2 forests on, doubled up, stacked, on a empty double space. The next thing we have is build a ship. Build a ship is similar to building a house, except we're going to be building them down here. In doing so, you're going to need to pay the cost. This one here is 2 wood and 2 fish, 6 wood and a gold. This one is either 8 wood and 8 fish, or you can spend 4 gold. These also, in addition to raising the amount of your haul each turn, such now we would get 5 at the beginning of the next turn, they're also worth victory points in 1, 2, and 4 at the end of the game. The last action on this board is to take an elder. In doing so, you simply select one of these elders and you immediately place it on your board. Now, when you take the elder the first time, you have the option to use its ability right away, such as the sailor here. I could use him right away, and anytime you use an elder, you must take a fish from the dinner table and place it on him. And now I could take his action of serving fish, which is the same as this one, but I get +1 gold and plus wood per plate served. And one thing I didn't mention here, and I'll mention here, is when you take this action, you can do it as many times as you want, as long as you have the fish to accommodate it. If at any point later you want to take this action again, you can place a worker there and take it, but there will need to be a fish here to bring out at the start of it, not during it. If at any point you place your 3rd fish on there, you do remove 2 and put the other one in your personal supply. The last action that you can take that's not listed anywhere here is to pass. Now you can pass at any point, and you won't be out of the round as long as you have workers, but you will still only get 3 actions. So if one of your actions is pass, you will not use one of your workers that round. Once everyone has taken their 3 actions for the turn, we will go into a maintenance phase. In the maintenance phase, everyone is going to collect back up their workers, and the little ship here is going to move to the next round. So from the 1 over to the 2. Now some important notes here in a 2-player game. In round 4, we also will draw 4 of these C buildings into our hand that will be private to us to use until round 6, at which point the ones we haven't built will go into the general display for everyone to purchase. The game will go round and round like this, with you issuing shares, hauling in fish, adding on elders, and you can only have a maximum of 5 elders until the end of round 7, at which point we will count up the points as such. The end game scoring is fairly simple. You're going to add up any buildings you have. You're going to add in the victory points of any ships you have. You're going to get 1 victory point for each share you have, and you're including others, and you're going to get 1 victory point per gold. In addition, we are also going to deduct any negatives here for building spaces that we did not cover up, and we are going to lose 1 victory point for each unissued share still in our possession. Whoever has the most points is the winner. So that's a look at Nusfjord. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the overview, I don't believe, is that there are other building decks within the game that you can play for a little bit of variability, and I'll touch on that in a few minutes. Now, the game is 1 to 5 players, and I've played it with multiple players and solo, so I'll cover both aspects of that. I really do enjoy this game quite a bit, and each time I've played it, I've really had a lot of fun playing it. But what this game really feels like to me is it feels kind of Rosenberg light. Like it feels like an intro to all of his other games. The game shares similarities with games such as Agricola or Glass Road or Caverna, and I really just felt familiar within the game, having already been a big fan of those games. So if you're already a fan of those games, you're going to feel familiar within this game. But if you haven't played those games, this is probably a good game to introduce you to those games. The player interaction in the game is a little light, as it is in most worker placement games. The shares do add to it a little bit, and I really did enjoy that bit of stock market feel that was within the game with those shares, because you really do feel the pressure to issue those shares because you don't want those negative points at the end of the game. But you also sometimes feel pressure to try to buy back your own shares. And so I really enjoyed that. Now the game does have 3 resources within it. It has the wood, the fish, and the gold. But the gold for me was the most interesting part of those resources, because the gold not only is a resource for buying things, but it's also a 1-to-1 victory point. So you really have to make some decisions when spending it. One of my favorite building cards in the game is the castle, and it's in the intro herring deck, and all it says on it is the castle does nothing. And that made me laugh, but I also found the castle to be interesting because the castle is worth 11 victory points, but it cost 8 gold to put it out. Now you are going to gain an additional victory point in putting it down because it's going to cover up a -1 spot, but you are essentially spending 8 victory points for 11 or 12 victory points. And that really, to me, is a good representation of this game. This game has a bit of a bean counter feel in that you're making these small strides every move to gain 1, 2, maybe 3 victory points that is going to add up. Now, another thing I really enjoyed in the game was the Elder cards. Now, it's not apparent at first how useful they are, but once you take on a couple of them, you'll see how they start to create this asymmetry in the game that I really started to enjoy. And if you got the right combination with them, with the buildings, you really could start to develop a strategy that is unique to your particular play style. Now, you do have to balance that with the fact that you have to give them fish at the start of each round, and there needs to be fish out on the dining table to even use them. So there is a bit of risk in taking them, but if you figure out just how to utilize them, they really can help your strategy a lot. And the same way with the buildings. If you take the right buildings, they really can help you develop this asymmetric board that is going to play into your strategy, especially if you can find chains of combinations that work for you. The game does feel like it kind of leads you a little bit. You never feel lost and you never feel out of it through the 7 rounds. And every time we've played, the scores have been relatively close. This isn't a point salad at the end, because at the end, you're only getting victory points for your ships, your buildings, some gold, and then losing some points. So there's very little scoring in the game. Now, I did find that the other fish decks, the building decks, do tend to give a little more scoring opportunities, and they have some interesting things in them, such as adjacent adjacencies for points and things like that, but I really enjoyed how each deck feels a little different, but not enough to change how you play the game. Overall, if you're looking for a worker placement game that is one, ridiculously easy to learn and teach, and players of varying skill can compete on an even level, that has a little bit of player interaction in terms of the shares and in terms of blocking people out from spots, this is a game you're going to want to take a look at. If you're looking for a solo game with a Rosenberg feel, this is something you also want to take a look at as well. Now, for me personally, I did enjoy the solo game, but I found my score was about the same each time, and it really just got a little same for me in that respect. So it's not something that I would pull out solo. For me, solo, I still think At the Gates of Loyang is his best game. Overall, I really do enjoy the game. I highly recommend taking a look at this game. It plays well from 2 to 5 players, and even the solo game is very fun to play. The resources and buildings and the limited choices make it easy to get into if it's your first time playing. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Nusfjord, and I look forward to seeing you folks next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.